So Norman Ornstein, what you're talking about looks like we're in for more political gridlock. In your recent book, It's Worse Than It Looks, How the American Constitutional System Collided with the New Politics of Extremism, you wrote about this very phenomenon that you're describing. But it was thought that with the re-election of President Obama, that perhaps some of the more radical Republicans, those affiliated with the Tea Party, might come around and say, well, think about more compromise. But it doesn't look like that's the case.
Carol, one election doesn't solve our deeper dysfunctional problems that have been decades in the making, and that are at least as much embedded in the culture now as they are in politics. That's a good part of the problem. We have Americans who get their information from one set of sources. They don't even share the same set of facts about the world as others do. And we have a coarsen culture, and it's one that challenges the motives of people on the other side. One small example, in the battle to bring down Chuck Hagel, we had in the battle to bring down Chuck Hagel, the president's nominee for Secretary of Defense, we had a rumor that's been floating out there that was repeated by Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, that Hagel had been getting funding from a group called Friends of Hamas. Now, anybody who's investigated this can't find any record of any such group. But when you start to get things like that thrown out there, an attempt really to smear a senator with a charge that he's in debt to a foreign group labeled as terrorists by the American government, when there's no evidence for it, that tells you something about the culture that transcends any particular election. Now, I want to make another point, which is I could make a case that we'll get through this and actually do quite well. The fact is, for all of the confrontation over these fiscal issues, we've got other issues where you've got bipartisan coalitions developing. 6 months ago, if we'd been talking about immigration, I would have said, there's zero chance of an immigration bill moving forward. The lines have been drawn very sharply here. The election changed all that. And all of a sudden, Republicans getting trounced at the polls by Hispanic voters and Asian American voters are saying we could be in the permanent minority unless we deal with this issue. And when the president spoke at his State of the Union about immigration, he did it in a nonpartisan and conciliatory way, and we've got a bipartisan group working together to try and resolve that issue. On guns, you've got senators from across the spectrum coalescing around dealing with the lack of gun checks, background checks for people. Again, 6 months ago, we would have said there's no chance of anything like this happening. If we get past this initial set of confrontations on fiscal issues, we're not that far from stabilizing our debt. And then the president talked about an infrastructure initiative that has the backing of business and many Republicans as well. We could see a remarkably productive year ahead, which is unusual for a second-term president. But we could also see a downward spiral back into embarrassing dysfunction. And we may see some combination of the two. More than likely, we'll see a combination of the two. Sadly, I think if I'm forced to lay odds, there are greater odds that we have more dysfunction than there are that we turn it around.